Jason, welcome to Plain Talk Money. I'm glad you're here.
Hey, it's good to be here, John.
So tell me a little bit about the income situation you have and explain your job. It seems like you have a spouse who's working as well.
So, as far as what I do, I'm an applications developer.
Hmm.
I work in fintech, and that is, it pays pretty well. Her income is definitely very strange. So, like many businesses, you don't always have a projected. I mean, you can project how much you're going to make in a given year, but obviously, you have a finance channel. You don't always meet those goals, right?
Yeah, it's always really variable when it comes to a small business as opposed to having an income. Based on what you wrote here, it looks like you're putting about 30% of your income into the different retirement accounts. Is that right?
Well, so the yes, my goal of investing in a given year is 30% of my total our total gross income. So yeah, I mean, as far as the investing and everything, I feel very comfortable, I guess, where we're at. We're very lucky. I mean, without a doubt. We worked hard and we overcame our own round of debt.
What's really interesting about your story, we're talking a bit about before we started recording this video, is that you and your spouse used to have a ton of student debt. And on top of that, you dropped out of med school. So tell me a little bit about that climb from there to where you are today. Because I imagine there are people looking at this saying, oh, look, this was a golden spoon situation. Success leads to more success, not a big deal. Where it's really behind the numbers is actually the opposite story, a climb from the bottom to where you are today, which is a very successful spot to be in.
First, I will say that my parents did pretty well for themselves, but they made sure not to always transfer that down to us. I remember being in fourth grade, fifth grade, and the only thing my mom would buy for me were sweatpants because she didn't want to buy anything that actually fit well because I would outgrow it, things like that. So she would go buy these cheap sweatpants. I was a kid, I was a boy. And so I'd slide, I'd skid, I'd get holes in them, after a certain amount of time because I wore these a lot. They were all I had to wear. I had like three pairs. I just cycled them.
Mm-hmm.
And she would patch them, wouldn't buy me a new pair, go buy an iron on patch and patch my sweatpants. And I think I was in middle school. So I would have been in seventh grade before I remember one of my friends saying, I don't think I've ever seen you in jeans before or shorts or anything like that because I didn't have shorts. I mean, Texas is just, it was sweatpants. Now, these were upper middle class people even then. And it was just like they, never flaunted money, saved a lot of it, and all of that. And so the deal was though, like I'd go to school, they would pay for my school, which was super cheap back then. But after that, we were on our own. So everything was great. Life was great until reality hits you right after you graduate from college.
It's a
And at
tough
that point,
moment.
I was trying to go. I was trying to go to med school, and so me and my girlfriend, now my wife, we moved in together in Houston, and I went to med school, and didn't like it. So I take issue with drop out. I did not drop out. I
Pardon me.
withdrew.
You
So
withdrew. Pardon me. Pardon
yeah,
me.
basically just did like retail type jobs, not making a lot of money. Eventually I got to be like a store manager of like a GameStop game store, 27,000 a year. And my wife was in school at the time, and my parents were like, look, if you're on the streets, we'll help, right? Like they're not going to let us die. But the big thing they taught me was like I should own up to my stuff. I need to go this alone. I'm not going to ask for help. And we never did. They sometimes would offer, but mostly it was like, no, we got this. We'll figure it out. We put ourselves here. We'll get there. And when my wife and I had gotten together, I had about $10,000 to $15,000 in credit card debt because my first week on campus, you got free T-shirts and free koozies and free all sorts of stuff for signing up for credit cards.
Oh,
So I
it's
signed up for
awful.
like six of
Awful.
them, and then I ended up canceling five, and I had one. And I remember getting that credit card, and like it came in, and man, I think I got it like on a Wednesday, and that weekend we drove to Houston,
Hmm.
went to the Galleria, and I bought my first set of Abercrombie and Fitch clothes that I thought was so cool. I had racked up a bunch of credit card debt. My wife was like She saved and bought her first car, which was a 60, like 68 Mustang. She paid for all of her college herself. She took, all this stuff, took out the loans and everything, and she had saved all this money. She graduated with no debt because she was at that time was able to have saved up herself and worked through college. So she struggled. I didn't. We got together with this massive debt. She knew about it, super frugal. We started paying that down. I go back to medical school for another semester, thinking maybe I was wrong. I mean, I did get in. They welcomed me back. I should got to try again. So I did. Same result. This is not a job that I want to do anymore, basically.
Yeah. So you withdrew with good grades, making
The
sure I
second
could
time.
correct it. Okay.
Yeah, the second time, but it's still 2 semesters, so that's a year basically.
People often think that the worst thing you can do in the US education system is not go to college. And that's wrong. It's going to college, getting a bunch of student loans, and then dropping out.
Yes.
Because then you're basically back where you started, except you owe a ton of money. And the government still wants that money. And if you have private loans, they still want that money. You did attend school, you just didn't get what was promised for a variety of reasons. In your case, you realized this was not for you. Your wife early on figured out the path. Ideally, everyone should walk. Avoid debt, pay for cars in cash, and you can have your family help you here and there, but you try to get ahead without taking on debt. Well, in your case, what's fascinating is you learned a lot of the lessons the hard way, right? You got student loans that didn't end up with a degree. You had a bunch of credit card debt, and you still found your way forward. You still found your way to where you are today, which is on paper very successful.
Yeah. Yeah. We had about 150-ish thousand in student loans, right? So we had a house payment. I became a teacher at that point, and I started making more money, which was great. My wife opened up her business. She started to make more money. First year was pretty rough, but after that, it got quite a bit better, and we were able to pay the minimum on our mortgage. By this point, that credit card debt that I had from college, we had paid off a while back. We aggressively attacked that prior to the student loans, and then we were able to get those deferred for a bit until we were able to tackle those. And then it was just, aggressively paying down the student loans as much as we could. Then I got very lucky, and a buddy of mine hired me to go work at a bank doing business analytics. And that basically got me in the door. And then salary jumped up, which was good. So kind of, John, I know you talk a lot about this on your stream of, invest in yourself, put in time you can invest in the market and put time there and make a lot of money, but you can also invest in yourself, get a higher salary, and get more percentages back on your 401ks and things like that. So that's basically what I did. Worked really hard, learned everything that I could, and then just, started job hopping like you do nowadays. Bounced around between a few other banks till I landed where I'm at right now, and just kind of moved on up the ladder. And interestingly enough, the guy that hired me for my first job is the guy that also hired me for this job. So nepotism is also important.
Yeah, it's not, I wouldn't even call it nepotism as much as connections, right? If you consistently show that you are someone worth hiring, then when people move companies and you're available, they're going to say, oh, I don't need to go through an extensive hiring process and take a roll of the die on whether I'll get a good employee or somebody crap. I already know this person delivers. Going back to that previous comment about investing in yourself, it's so important to understand how that works. And people always misunderstand how to make money. People often fool themselves believing that something like stock picking is going to be a good use of their time. And it's not. Statistically, you're going to be up against professionals and you're going to lose. A better use of your time, if you're trying to really make money, is just work harder at your job and compete against your coworkers. I don't think there's a single person who works on a team who believes they're not the best person on that team, who isn't sitting there in their head saying, I am definitely the number one person here. And if you prove that, you get the raise, you get the promotion, and that pays off long term because that's more money you can invest in the market, and you can just let the compound interest work for you. It's a beautiful thing.
Quick side note, though. The job that I'm in today has absolutely nothing to do with what I went to college for. So I went to school for basically biomedical science. I was going full gung-ho, professional, med school, pharmacy school, dental school, that sort of thing. And, now I'm basically doing programming. I never thought I would end up doing it, but if I hadn't gone to college, I would not have ended up doing it. And it's not because of my degree. So it's kind of funny to say that I went to college and it's the social aspect that got me where I am. Because if I hadn't gone to college, I wouldn't have met my wife, and her best friend's husband is who hired me into this job because I knew my wife. So she's basically made my entire life, our entire life, between helping me get all the debt paid off and introducing me to the one person who got me into a very lucrative career.
And I think there'll be people who take away the wrong lesson from the story. There are going to definitely be people who listen here having a negative attitude, believing that you got lucky here, that you just married the right person,
I
you
did.
dropped out and you climbed your way up and it all worked out. And there is truth to that, but it also misses that other point. And I love that you're touching on it, which is if you're determined and you're trying to take advantage of the right opportunities that show up, you can find success. If you believe you won't be successful and you're not trying to find success, you're not going to be successful. But you went to college because you thought that was going to be a good choice. And while it didn't work out from the degree perspective, it got you connected with wonderful people, including your wife. And that means you're surrounding yourself with really intelligent people. And then intelligent people happen to know other intelligent people. Things work out well for people who position themselves correctly. If you've surrounded yourself by people who don't believe in success and aren't trying to move up in the workforce, you're not going to get any advantages. You're not going to have any you scratch my back, I scratch your back. I also want to briefly touch on the college aspect because it's become such a meme online where people are like, oh, you don't need to go to college. Who wants to go to college? They're all lying. Every one of them. Every person who goes out there and says college is worthless is hoping that you don't just Google the statistics on it. People who have a bachelor's degree have half the unemployment rate as people who have a high school degree. They also make nearly twice the wage on a median basis, not average, a median basis, the 50th person. They make about twice the wage as somebody who has a high school degree. Getting a bachelor's degree is fantastic. Are there other pathways like going to trade school? 100%. But for most people, you need to keep going further in your education than high school. It's expensive, but it pays.
The friend aspect is a very big thing as well. Prior to becoming a teacher, when I guess you could say my professional career started at the age of like 27, 28, having all this debt made it to where we couldn't save anything. All of the you start saving at 20 and stuff, that didn't happen for us. We didn't start saving until 40. A lot of that too was I had a group of friends from, the retail world, things like that. And, we were all slackers. And it wasn't until started teaching and had to ditch these friends because I was no longer working with them and I now had an actual real job type of thing. Mm-hmm. And I started being around other coworkers that were, adults because I really wasn't at that point. Did things start to shift? Still wasn't really saving or anything at that point, other than the automatic retirement system that they have in Texas. It just kind of was like once I moved into the other, the fintech world, of new friends that are even more adults and even more financially conscious. It still took one of my brother-in-law, actually. He's a great salesperson, so you talk to him and he's just all, oh man, you got to try this, it was great. Well, one time he was telling me I got to try investing in these stocks with from COVID or for COVID vaccines. I was like, that's actually not a bad idea. I have this really old account I've never messed with that I could have actually invested over those 10, 20 years, but I was stupid and left it alone. I was like, I'm going to invest in some of this stuff. And kind of caught the bug. And I got back into researching some stocks and stuff that I hadn't done since college. And that just kind of led me to finding, you as I learned more about finance. But yeah, that was 2020 was when we actively started investing again.
It's impressive when you look at the results. You got serious just a few years ago, and you have a large portfolio, and you are putting away a lot every single month into the market. And I love that. I love also that it's tied to the story of you knew somebody, or in this case, it was your brother-in-law, who was really excited about investing. And while I'm against just YOLOing money into different penny stocks, hoping you find the one company that pulls off the COVID vaccine, I do love that you got you into investing. I love that you made you think, oh, I can be a little greedy here. I can take advantage of the pandemic, right? I don't need to be fearful and panic sell out of the market. And nor do I need to be ignorant and just kind of ignore the opportunity. Hey, here's an opportunity to buy into the market. And while again, I'm against the YOLO on penny stocks, I like that it brought you back in. I like that it started to get you excited.
Yeah. The other thing though about it is, and I know we'll get to it,
Mm-hmm.
is the debt. We made the conscious decision to attack our student loans instead of saving uh, back in the day. Going back, I don't know if I knew now, obviously what I or if I knew then what I know now, I would have done so. I would have not done that because we would have made way more than the 6% interest on those loans by slow rolling them and paying off and putting stuff into savings over those last 10 years or so.
Why don't we just use this as a tangent and talk about your debt situation? Because you do actually have debt. And this is one where I think I'm going to disagree with you some.
Well, that's the thing, right? Real quick. So what I was going to say though is that now I'm carrying this debt, thinking that I will make more from the savings. Thus, in the long run, even if the percentage is just a bit more, I come out ahead. Should I aggressively attack this instead of saving, like I did in the past? That sort of thing.
I think that is a very important question to ask. And it's one where I'm going to take a different approach than I expect that you're expecting. You have a little over $45,000 in debt. This is
Yes.
excluding your mortgage, and it's broken into three parts. You have a car that you owe a little over 11,000 on at 5.5%. You have a scooter at 4% that you owe a little over 6,000 on, and you have your AC units at 7% that you owe nearly $28,000 on. And I'm sure you're aware that the US stock market historically, if you look at the S&P 500, has produced an annual average return of 10%. You say, oh, 10% is more than the 5.5% of the car, the 4% on the scooter, and the 7% on the AC units. Why would I ever bother paying off that debt? Who cares? Because I can put it in the market. And as long as the historical returns hold up, I'll make more money. However, I would pay off all that debt. I would put it at a top priority and pay it off. Because here is the problem with debt it is like a disease. Getting into too much debt is one of the few things that can ruin what you've built so far. You've won the game. You've done it. Jason, at this point, I'm proud of you. You got the A on the exam. At the rate you're going, you are going to be financially successful from here on out. You will be able to help your kid and any future grandkids you have. You will be able to have a nice retirement. You'll be able to go on nice vacations. You will be able to drive the car you want. You have won. You have succeeded in a system and you did it from $150,000 in student debt. At one point, you had 15 to 20K in credit card debt and you climbed your whole way up and you've won. Your mentality now, it should not be focused on how do I make more money? Your mentality now should only be how do I make sure I don't blow the lead? How do I make sure I don't take this near perfect ending and botch it? So, one of the few ways you can do that is get comfortable with debt, to get a little too greedy and just say, you know what? I bet the US stock market will hold up for another 10% over the next 2 decades. Why wouldn't I pay off any of this debt? And when I could put money into the stock market. But you don't need more money. You need less opportunities to botch this. And therefore, if I were you, I would just polish off the debt. I would understand that you will statistically make less money, but you've just taken your 1% chance of getting comfortable with debt and making a bunch of bad financial decisions because of it. You've just taken that from 1% to zero, right? You've just gotten one of the few things on the table that can destroy your future off the table. What do you think about that?
No, that was kind of one of the big things I wanted to talk about. Is we'll just go with the scenario first. So my wife and I have been considering moving, which I know is an absolutely stupid thing in the current economic environment. However, we would be doing it for my daughter's school district. I want her to be in a safe district. I want her to like her school, and she's just not as happy as I think she could be, and things like that. Well, if we do move in a year, those AC units, that's going to get rolled into the house anyway and get paid off, right? Yeah, hypothetically speaking, I sell my home for $500,000. I owe 187,000 on it. So that's what, 313,000, right? Instead of getting 313 to put towards my new house, which would help, bring down that principal, well, 27 comes out of that first, pays off the loan, and then I go, right? So it's kind of one of those things of, if I aggressively pay that down, that's where I guess it's going to be a really weird question for you. If I aggressively pay that down, then I would get more back in the sale of my house, right? But that 400 or whatever a month goes away when I sell the house from a monthly standpoint. So would it be better to pay off the other ones, the car and the scooter?
At the end of the day, the loan for the AC units is the most expensive. You get the best rate of return if you pay it off. When you pay off debt, it's like you buy a guaranteed investment that's producing that interest rate. So effectively, a way to view this would be, you can either put your money into the AC units, which is giving you a 7% return, or you can put it into the car at a 5.5% return. I would just put it into the AC units.
Okay.
And in the future, I would try to make sure you avoid letting debt pile up.
Yeah.
Is this a bad debt situation? No, right? You don't have anything like credit card debt here or payday loans, but it's an unnecessary risk. This entire situation should have been dealt with ages ago, because at this point, it's your game to lose. You're not trying to win anymore. You've won. On paper, you just need to get to the finish line. Now, there was something you said earlier that I really want to dive into. And when we were emailing back and forth setting this up, you mentioned it there as well. It was in regards to switching homes so that you could move school districts. And it felt like to me that you had a bit of guilt about that decision. You felt like it was a bad financial choice. Can you tell me a bit about your feelings towards moving from one house to another?
Well, I mean, I hate moving. I also, in some ways, hate uncertainty, and so like a lot of anxiety over buying a house. This will be the first time I sell one, but from the financial point of view, it's just kind of like, we have a 2.85% interest right now. I should carry this debt as long as I possibly can.
As you're talking about this, you're doing the finances, you're feeling anxious about moving, which I get. Moving is not fun. And you're right that after a decade or two, tons of stuff accumulates, and it is a haul to move it over there. Heck, there's an entire company called U-Haul. You get the idea. Nobody's sitting there. It's like you luxuriously carry to the next house. No, it's haul, literally. But the one thing I don't see as you're talking about this is pride. And I think it's a mistake. I think you should be proud of yourself here. You have the ability to take a hit financially right now to help your kid by moving, by getting her into a better school district. And the one thing I don't like when we bring this up is you aren't proud of it. You're not sitting there saying, I'm glad I can do this for my daughter. I feel like you're too concerned about the money. The point of money is to be a tool. A hammer bashes in nails. A screwdriver screws in a screw. Money gets you goods and services you want. That's it. That's its only purpose. That's all it is. It's not points in a video game. There is no high score, and there is no bonus you get at the end of this all by having a lot of money or a little. It's just a question of, are you able to get the goods and services you want? As a tool, one of the best uses of money is to take care of those you love. And you are in a position, so as somebody who has climbed from the bottom to the top, you're in a position now to take a financial hit to help your kid. I get that the moving is still going to be anxious and it's going to be a haul. I get that there's a financial hit here, but I really wish you'd find some pride in your ability to provide for your daughter, to be able to make her life better. What do you think about that?
I didn't really look at it from that point of view. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, that's what we did with my dad. We moved quite a bit for him to be able to, we were moving for him in this case to get a better job, but that was to make more money to then provide for us, type of thing. I mean, a long time ago, I had an offer at Toyota uh, to go. Well, not an offer, I guess, but a job that I could have gotten that would have made me. I'd have to fly out to California on like Sunday, and I'd come back on Friday night because they were building the offices down here. A lot of money and a company car, all sorts of wonderful perks and stuff. Toyota's a really good company to work for. Um, but my daughter was 3. My dad was gone a lot when I was young because he traveled for his job. And I was like, yeah, it's not worth it. Right. We'll make less money. But since then, it's also been kind of like this mad dash to who knows when the market's going to crater, if it's going to crater. I need to do as much as I can right now, focus on this because who knows when another run on banks happens and now I get impacted,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have a job anymore. Um, yeah, sure, I'll have to look for another one. I'm sure I would find something, but it's kind of like I want to make sure we get that saved and going into a new house, even for the district, which I want to be able to do and provide for. I just look at it as lots less money I can save. Yeah, now that I think about it, I can do this. I want to do this. Should I in the grand scheme of things? Because, there's more time past her graduating high school that I'll be in that house paying it off and things like that.
You're age 43. Between you and your spouse, you're making over 200K a year.
Mhm.
You will be fine when it comes to your long-term investing. Unless you want a mansion when you retire, which I
No,
don't think is the case, you're going to do fine. You invest at a very aggressive rate. If you, let's just say you work to 63, so you can probably retire sooner. If you work to 63, you're probably going to have at least 2 more recessions, which means 2 more amazing sales in the stock market, as long as you're in a place to protect yourself and are able to hold a job like most people do. Some people get unlucky, but most people hold their job through a recession. And if you are in a position where you have no debt, you have a well stocked emergency fund, you'll have a chance to buy low. I have very little doubt, honestly, no doubt that you'll be financially successful. There are areas to clean up if you're worried, but once you've cleaned up those areas, you're good. I do not believe you should have any debt besides a mortgage. I want to make sure, because I was looking over the numbers, I didn't see a specific emergency fund, or at least your cash investment being large enough to be an emergency fund right now for you.
that is,
And
that
as
is that is in a savings account just as an emergency fund.
okay, is your emergency fund just 10K?
Yeah. Technically, any of my brokerage, all of this is my emergency fund. If I had to liquidate, I would liquidate, right? But to prevent that, yes, it is at 10K. It's just how do you want to define emergency?
You want an actual emergency fund, one that isn't tied to the value of the stock market, because the time you're most likely to lose your job is during a recession. Having an actual high yield savings account or money market fund that's just 3 to 6 months of your necessary spending there, ready to go, no matter what the stock market does, reduces your risk even further. Your entire financial situation is a question of what would it take to screw it up?
So I guess then what you're suggesting would be to reduce the amount going into the brokerages each month,
Mm-hmm.
uh, increase the amount going to the AC, but then also so maybe splitting emergency fund and the debt.
Whatever way will get rid of the debt and get you a well-stocked emergency fund in a very conservative position, a money market fund or a high yield savings account. And at the end of the day, you might look back and say, hey, no emergency came up. I actually ended up 100K less overall as my net worth. But that 100K probably is not going to change your lifestyle. What would dramatically change your lifestyle is losing your job during a recession and then trying to figure out how you handle the bills. And it
Yeah.
might take you a year to find a job.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. I will work on that.
Jason, thank you so much for coming on the
Yeah,
show.
thanks for having me, man. I appreciate the chat.